The galaxy had always relied on Earth. Its presence was undeniable, its trade routes a lifeline, its diplomats the voice of reason. But one day, without warning, Earth fell silent. No warning, no explanation, just a sudden emptiness that spread through the cosmos like a cold shadow. Communications ceased entirely at first. It was chalked up to a temporary malfunction, a glitch in the system perhaps, but weeks passed. And still there was nothing, not a single transmission, no trade ships coming through, no signals, no beacons to guide the way. Earth had gone dark. The Galactic Council, which oversaw the interstellar order, was thrown into disarray. It wasn't just Earth's absence that caused panic, but the fact that no one could even get in touch with anyone there. The diplomatic channels were sealed off. Every attempt to send a ship or probe into Earth's orbit returned empty. No response from the planet, not even a whisper of distress. Everything that had once made Earth a key player in galactic affairs was gone in an instant. The Quivarians, who were known for their reliance on advanced technology, were the first to take notice. The silence disrupted trade routes that spanned galaxies, and their merchant ships were forced to reroute their precious goods to avoid the black hole of Earth's absence. The Thraxians, a fierce militaristic species, raised concerns at the sudden lack of human presence on the battlefield. Earth had long been a military stronghold, as weapons technology crucial in maintaining balance across star systems. Earth's military was vast and powerful, so why hadn't any signals gone out? Had they suffered some kind of catastrophic event? Was it a political move? Was it possible that they had fallen into some sort of chaos? The fear was palpable, a sense of dread growing across the stars. Whispers of something far darker than a mere communication failure spread throughout the council, rumors of an unseen hand at work, an ancient force long thought dormant, something more terrifying than any known species in the galaxy. As the weeks turned into months, the Federation began to send ships to investigate the situation. An armada of varying species and expertise was assembled, each determined to uncover the truth behind Earth's disappearance. Some of them hoped it was an easy mistake that could be fixed, but deep down they all knew it could be something far worse, something they were not prepared for. It was a motley crew of explorers and diplomats who first set foot on Earth's orbit. The first wave of ships that arrived saw only an eerie silence. The massive ships hovered in the empty blackness surrounding the planet, with no signs of movement, no ships, no activity, not even an echo of the civilization that once thrived there. As they approached the surface, they detected no signs of life. The satellites orbiting the planet pinged back nothing. Even the highly sensitive scanners used by the explorers couldn't pick up any trace of energy, no heat signatures, no communication channels, nothing. The commanders of the fleet tried everything they knew to get a response, but nothing worked. Earth had become a dead world, no different from the countless barren planets scattered across the galaxy. It wasn't until the fleet commander, Captain Lena, suggested landing on the surface that anyone felt a true sense of unease. They were walking into the unknown, a place once teeming with life, and now eerily still. No one could explain the silence, but they all felt its weight pressing down on them. Something about this wasn't just strange, it was unsettling, as if they had entered a place beyond the reach of any understanding, something ancient and untouchable. The fleet, now anchored in Earth's orbit, hovered like silent sentinels in the vastness of space. Several ships, each representing a different faction of the Galactic Federation, were assembled, each with a unique purpose. The Quivarians, known for their intelligence and heavy reliance on artificial intelligence, had deployed their best cybernetic engineers. The Thraxians, the Federation's most formidable military force, had brought their heavily armored warships, prepared for whatever threat might emerge. The Illyrians, gifted with telepathic powers, had sent their most experienced diplomats and strategists. Despite their technological advantages, all of them shared a common feeling: unease. The silence was palpable. Captain Lena, commander of the fleet, had been the one to insist on landing a team on Earth's surface. No one knew what had caused the communications blackout, but the emptiness felt like a trap, and Lena knew that action had to be taken, decisively and without hesitation. Yet even she couldn't shake the strange sense of dread as her fleet moved closer to Earth, the once bustling planet now eerily still beneath them. "Prepare for landing," Lena's voice crackled through the communication channels. "We can't afford to stay in orbit any longer. It's time to face whatever lies below." The ships descended toward the Earth's surface, each one carefully scanning for any signs of danger. The descent felt slow, too slow, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. As they broke through the upper atmosphere, the fleet's sensors continued to ping with nothing but static. Even the landmass that should have been visible from orbit appeared distorted, as though hidden under some kind of cloak, an illusion cast over the terrain. On board the leading ship, the Quiverian engineers worked frantically to tap into Earth's satellite network, trying to revive any dormant signals. They were used to deciphering complex systems, but this was unlike anything they had encountered before. Earth's defenses, if they could even be called that, were formidable in a way that suggested a level of foresight that was beyond even their most advanced algorithms. It was as if someone had purposefully set everything in place to prevent outsiders from learning the truth. "We're getting a faint signal," a Quiverian technician reported, her voice filled with equal parts awe and fear. "It's encrypted, but it's definitely coming from below the surface." Captain Lena leaned forward in her command chair, narrowing her eyes. "Decrypt it. Now." The technician nodded, working quickly. The signal was weak, but it was there, coming from deep within the planet. An old transmission, one that had been buried, hidden from the stars. As the encryption was cracked, a strange, haunting message began to emerge. Fragments of static and broken sentences, something about awakening and guardians, but the rest was lost in the noise. "Can you make anything out?" Lena asked, her voice tight with tension. The technician swallowed, her gaze never leaving the data stream. I can't make full sense of it yet, but it's almost like a warning. There's something down there, something alive." A cold silence fell over the command deck. Lena turned to the rest of her crew. "Prepare for deployment. We're going in." Despite the warning in the transmission, there was no turning back. The fleet was already here, and the truth of Earth's silence demanded to be uncovered. As the landing team suited up, the atmosphere grew thick with anticipation. Each member of the crew could feel it, the invisible weight of an unknown danger that lingered beneath Earth's surface. They were about to step into a mystery far older and more dangerous than any of them had anticipated, something that Earth's silence had hidden for far too long. The planet wasn't just abandoned, it had been sealed away, and now the secret was about to be revealed. The team disembarked, their boots touching Earth's soil for the first time in centuries. The air was stale and unwelcoming, and the sky, once filled with the hustle and bustle of human civilization, was now as empty as the planet itself. As they moved deeper into the abandoned cityscape, the eerie stillness seemed to pulse around them, like the planet itself was alive, watching, waiting. In the distance, towering structures loomed, their surfaces covered in strange markings that hadn't been there in the records of old. There was no wind, no sounds of wildlife, just the steady hum of their equipment. But the deeper they ventured, the more it became clear that Earth's silence was not a sign of peace. It was a warning. Something had happened here, something catastrophic, and it was far from over. The deeper the team ventured into the heart of the abandoned city, the more surreal the landscape became. Towering skyscrapers, once symbols of humanity's great achievements, now stood frozen in time, their windows dark and empty. The streets were silent, devoid of the traffic and life that had once been a constant hum. The air carried an unsettling stillness, thick with the smell of decay and long-forgotten memories. The team pressed on, their boots echoing off the cracked pavement. Their sensors pinged continuously, searching for any trace of life. Yet there was nothing. Not a heartbeat, not a whisper of movement. It was as though Earth itself had been abandoned by time. They reached what appeared to be an old communication hub, its structure partially collapsed but still standing. Inside, layers of dust covered every surface, and the screens flickered with static as the Quiverian technicians tried to bring the equipment back online. One of them, a tall, silver-skinned engineer named Axel, worked quickly, his eyes darting between screens as he typed furiously into the control panel. "We're close," Zal muttered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the machinery. "I think I've unlocked something." Captain Lena stepped forward, her face a mask of determination. "What do you mean, something?" Zal didn't answer immediately, instead focusing on the screen as a new pattern of numbers and symbols began to emerge. They were ancient codes, far beyond the scope of anything the Quiverians had encountered. With a final keystroke, the screen flickered again, this time displaying an image that made everyone stop in their tracks. It was a map, but it wasn't a map of Earth. The map was of a star system, located light years away, one that no known race in the galaxy had ever charted. It was a network of planets, each with strange symbols beside them. There were annotations in an ancient language, one that none of the Federation's linguists could identify. The most curious part of the map was the symbol at its center. A circle, etched in jagged lines, pulsed with faint blue light on the screen. Is this Earth?" Lena asked, her voice strained with disbelief. "No," Sal replied, shaking his head. "This is something else entirely. But the symbol in the center, it's coming from Earth." The room grew tense as the implications sank in. The ancient message they had uncovered was no simple distress call. It wasn't a plea for help from a dying planet. It was a map to something much larger, much more dangerous. Before anyone could speak, another technician, an Illyrian named Vera, called out, her voice sharp with urgency. "There's more. I'm decoding the rest of the transmission." It's repeating a phrase. The team gathered around, leaning in as Vera's eyes glowed softly, translating the message in real time. "The progenitors rise," Vera read aloud. "The silence has begun. You are not ready. The guardians must awaken." The words hung in the air like a curse, and Captain Lena felt a chill run down her spine. "The progenitors," she whispered. She had heard the name before in passing. Stories told in hushed tones among the galaxy's oldest races. The progenitors were no myth. They were real, and their return meant something catastrophic. Zal's hands hovered over his keyboard, but his eyes were wide with fear. The progenitors are an ancient race, older than any known species. They were the ones who first seeded the galaxy with life, but they were sealed away long ago after a great war. If they've returned. He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. The Illyrians, telepathic and deeply attuned to the emotions of others, exchanged troubled glances. Vira's voice echoed in Lena's mind, soft but clear. "This is no simple warning. It is a call to arms." Earth's silence was a seal. It kept them locked away. But now that silence is broken, Captain Lena's mind raced. The progenitors' return would mark the end of everything they knew. The galaxy would be thrown into chaos. And yet, she couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning. Earth's silence had been the shield, and humanity's role in the galaxy had been hidden away for a reason. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what had to come next. "Send the map back to the fleet," she ordered, her voice firm. "We need to get off this planet and back to the Council. The galaxy needs to know what we've uncovered." But as the team prepared to leave the communication hub, the ground beneath their feet suddenly trembled, and a low, resonating hum filled the air. It was a sound like no other, a deep, vibrating pulse that seemed to come from the core of the planet itself. The silence had broken. The progenitors were awakening. And Earth, long thought to be abandoned, was now at the heart of an ancient storm that no one was prepared for. The tremors from below intensified, rattling the broken walls of the communication hub as if the planet itself were coming alive. Captain Lena's hand instinctively gripped her weapon as the entire team scrambled toward the exit. They had barely reached the doorway when the ground beneath them cracked open with a deafening roar, and a series of mechanical arms shot up from the depths, pulling themselves from the earth like ancient giants awakening from a slumber. "Move, now," Lena shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The team raced through the crumbling corridors, trying to outrun the unknown threat now emerging from the core of the planet. The tremors continued to intensify as more and more structures erupted from the Earth, metallic and ancient, as if they had been buried here for centuries, waiting for the right moment to rise. In the distance, the sound of rumbling engines grew louder. It was a fleet, a massive fleet of ships unlike any the Federation had ever seen. Their sleek forms were adorned with symbols that matched the cryptic map they'd uncovered. The ships were enormous, constructed with materials that were far beyond the reach of current technology. But it wasn't just the ships that caught their attention. It was the humans. Standing in the shadows of these colossal vessels were figures, tall, armored, and glowing with an otherworldly energy. They stood silently, watching the incoming Federation team with an unsettling calm. The air around them seemed to hum with power, their presence palpable and overwhelming. Captain Lena froze, her breath catching in her throat as she recognized them. "They're human," she murmured, disbelief thick in her voice. Her eyes flicked between the armored figures and the massive ships. These humans were not the same as the ones the galaxy had known. They were different, more advanced, far beyond what anyone had expected. And there was something in their eyes, something cold and ancient, that sent a shiver down her spine. The humans made no move to engage, but their gaze never wavered. It was as though they had been waiting for the Federation to arrive. The tension in the air was thick, and for the first time, Captain Lena felt like an intruder in a world that had never truly belonged to her people. A voice, soft but commanding, echoed in Lena's mind, cutting through the silence like a blade. "We are the Guardians." The words were not spoken aloud, but the message was clear. The Guardians. The humans here were no ordinary survivors. They were protectors, keepers of a secret history long hidden from the galaxy. The silence that had enveloped Earth was no accident. It was a safeguard, a measure to ensure that the galaxy was never again exposed to the ancient horrors that had once ravaged the stars. "Who are you?" Lena asked aloud, her voice shaky with a mix of awe and suspicion. The tallest figure stepped forward, removing their helmet to reveal a face that was unmistakably human. The features were sharp, their eyes a piercing blue that seemed to glow with an inner light. There was a sense of power in their presence, a quiet strength that spoke volumes. They were not the humans she had known. These humans had evolved, transformed by time and experience in ways that defied comprehension. "We are humanity's last defenders," the figure replied, their voice calm but filled with authority. "We were awakened when the silence began to break. We've watched over this planet for millennia, waiting for the moment when the progenitors would return." Captain Lena's mind raced. "The progenitors, are they connected to this?" she asked, pointing to the rising ships and the strange energy that pulsed through the air. The figure nodded. "Yes. The progenitors are ancient, older than any race in the galaxy. They were once the creators of all life, spreading it across the stars, but they also sowed destruction in their wake. Long ago, humanity fought and defeated them. Earth became the sanctuary, a place of refuge from their terrible power. But now they are awakening again, and humanity has waited, prepared for their return." Lena's heart pounded in her chest. The implications of what the human had said were staggering. Earth had been a sanctuary, a shield for the galaxy. The silence that had enveloped the planet wasn't just a disappearance. It was a deliberate act of protection, hiding humanity's true role in the galactic order. These humans were no ordinary survivors. They were the true heirs to the galaxy's power, the ones who had once held the key to defeating the progenitors. And now, they had returned to protect the stars once more. But the question that burned in Lena's mind was one she couldn't ignore. "Why now?" she asked, her voice hoarse with disbelief. "Why did you leave us in the dark? Why didn't you warn the Federation?" The human leader's expression softened, almost with regret. "We couldn't. Humanity's legacy was buried, lost to the ages. But when the progenitors began to stir again, We knew it was time. The galaxy is not ready for them. You, the Federation, are not prepared. You will need us to survive." The weight of their words hit Lena with the force of a gravitational collapse. The Federation had no idea what it was truly up against. The progenitors were returning, and the galaxy's last hope was an ancient, isolated force: humanity. As the hum of energy from the fleet grew louder, Lena knew there was no turning back. The battle for the galaxy's future had already begun, and humanity's hidden power was the only thing that could stand in the way of the progenitors' return. The tension in the air was suffocating as Captain Lena stood before the human guardians, their strange power evident in every movement. The Federation fleet hovered silently above the planet, its ships now dwarfed by the sheer scale of the alien vessels that had emerged from Earth's depths. The humans, with their glowing blue eyes and ancient technology, had become the galaxy's only hope against a threat that had been buried for millennia. Yet, despite their power, there was a gnawing sense of uncertainty. Could humanity truly stand against the progenitors? As Lena tried to absorb the gravity of the situation, the voice of the human leader, who had introduced themselves as Commander Jonas Harrington, sounded once again, steady and calm, yet undeniably urgent. "The progenitors are awakening," Harrington said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Their ships are already moving. They're not just here to conquer Earth. They're here to reclaim the galaxy." Lena nodded slowly, her mind racing. The progenitors were a species older than the galaxy itself, a race so ancient that even the galaxy's oldest civilizations knew little about them. They had seeded life across the stars, but they had also brought destruction in their wake. Long ago, they had been overthrown by humanity, but now, their return meant the end of everything. "We have to act fast," Lena replied. "The Federation will need time to mobilize." Earth's silence. The map, it was all a warning. The progenitors are not a conventional enemy. We don't even know the extent of their power. Commander Harrington's expression darkened. "That's why we've kept Earth's existence hidden for so long. Humanity was never meant to be part of the galactic community. We were meant to be its protectors, but our isolation was necessary. The progenitors cannot know that we still exist, not until it is too late." Lena's stomach churned at the revelation. She had believed the humans had been hiding for reasons of their own. But this was something far more complex. Earth's silence wasn't just a political move or a tactical retreat. It was a safeguard, a shield against a force the galaxy had no hope of defeating on its own. "The progenitors have already begun their assault on nearby systems," Harrington continued. "Their fleet is vast, and their weapons are beyond anything the Federation has ever seen. Our old defenses, our technology, is the only thing that can stand against them, but it hasn't been fully awakened yet. We need the full power of the Guardians to activate the remaining beacons." Lena stared at him, trying to process everything he was saying. The scale of the threat was staggering. The Federation, powerful as it was, had no chance of standing up to the progenitors without humanity's help. Yet even with the Guardians' advanced technology, the battle would be unlike any the galaxy had ever faced. "If the progenitors are as strong as you say," Lena asked, her voice shaking, "how do we stand a chance?" Harrington's gaze grew somber as he looked past her, his eyes narrowing as if searching the horizon for a threat that only he could see. "The Guardians are the key, but even we are not invincible. We will need to strike fast, cut off their advance before they reach the core worlds. If they take the capital systems, it will be too late." Before Lena could ask what this meant, a sharp signal crackled through the comm system. It was an emergency transmission, urgent, distorted. A voice, strained with fear, came through. "This is Admiral Kell of the Third Fleet," the voice said, barely audible through the static. "We've encountered the progenitors. Too many ships. Their weapons, they're tearing through our defenses. We cannot hold them off. We need reinforcements, immediate extraction." The transmission cut off abruptly. Lena's heart sank as the weight of the situation hit her full force. The Federation fleet was already engaged in battle, and it was losing. "They're here," Lena whispered, her voice barely audible. Harrington's eyes burned with resolve as he turned back to her. "The progenitors are here, and they will not stop until they have wiped out everything. But Earth is not defenseless. We have hidden weapons beneath the surface. What you saw earlier were just the first signs of what lies dormant beneath. The power of the Guardians is awakening." He gestured to the massive ships that loomed behind him, their outlines glowing with an ethereal blue light. "These ships are not just for transport. They are weapons of war, but we need the Federation's fleet to back us up. Together, we can halt the progenitors' advance. If we don't act now, Earth will be the last bastion, and we will be too late to save the galaxy." Lena nodded, steeling herself for what was to come. "I'll send the signal to the fleet. We don't have much time." As she turned to leave, Harrington placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes locked with hers. "This will be unlike anything you've ever faced. The progenitors are not just conquerors. They are creators, destroyers, and manipulators of life itself. If they succeed in reclaiming the galaxy, everything will be undone. Humanity is the only force that can stop them." Lena's mind raced as she left the briefing room, her orders clear but the stakes higher than ever before. The Federation had no idea what it was up against. The progenitors were not just invaders, they were the architects of the galaxy's history, and they had returned to reshape it, and only Earth's hidden defenders could stand in their way. The countdown had begun. The Federation's fleet was already in motion, gathering in high orbit above Earth, ready to face the progenitors' oncoming forces. The tension was palpable in the command center of the flagship Vigilance. Every officer and soldier knew the stakes. This wasn't just a battle for Earth. It was a battle for the galaxy itself. The progenitors' fleet was vast, unlike anything the Federation had ever encountered. They were ancient, and their technology was beyond comprehension. Captain Lena stood at the command console, her gaze fixed on the holographic display of the star system. The Federation's ships, including the mighty Vigilance, were still regrouping, but they couldn't afford to wait. The enemy was already advancing. "Admiral Kell's fleet is barely holding their ground," a communications officer said, his voice strained. "They've lost contact with several divisions. The progenitors' weapons are unlike anything we've encountered. Their ships, they're tearing through the Federation's defenses like paper." Lena's jaw clenched. It had only been hours since the transmission from Admiral Kell had been cut off, and already the Federation's most advanced fleet was on the verge of collapse. The progenitors were no ordinary foe. They were creators and destroyers, capable of manipulating energy in ways that defied all known physics. "Send the signal to the Guardians," Lena commanded. "We need every advantage we can get." On the surface, Commander Harrington and the human Guardians had already begun preparations. The massive vessels that had risen from beneath Earth's surface were now fully operational. Their weapons, dormant for centuries, were being activated. As much as Lena knew the Federation was crucial to the fight, it was clear that humanity's hidden power, those ancient ships and the Guardians themselves, was the key to turning the tide. The Federation fleet was still assembling, but they had no idea what kind of force they were about to face. Lena wasn't sure how much longer they could afford to wait. She turned toward her second-in-command, a Thraxian officer named Sarthak, who had been monitoring the enemy's movements. "What's their current position?" Lena asked, her voice firm. Sarthak's eyes flicked to the tactical map, his expression tight. "They're advancing fast. Our fleets are spread too thin. If they keep this pace, they'll reach the core worlds in days, maybe hours. And their weapons, we have nothing that can match them. They're using some form of energy manipulation, direct hits that bypass shields and tear through our hulls." Lena swallowed hard. This wasn't just a war for territory. It was a war for survival. The progenitors weren't interested in occupying worlds. They sought to erase all that had been built since their fall. She turned back to the comms officer. "Get Commander Harrington on the line. We need those Guardian ships in the fight now." Moments later, the screen flickered to life, and Harrington's calm, steely face appeared. Despite the gravity of the situation, there was a sense of calm in his demeanor. "We're ready," Harrington said, his voice cutting through the static. "The Guardians are prepared to mobilize. The ships you saw earlier are now fully activated, but we'll need the Federation fleet to cover our movements. We have no idea how the progenitors will react when they realize the Guardians are here. This could get very chaotic very quickly." Lena's heart beat faster as she processed his words. The Federation's forces were already stretched thin, and now they had to support humanity's ancient ships. The Guardians had power, that much was clear, but it was still uncertain if they could truly stand up to the progenitors' might. "We can't afford any more delays," Lena said firmly. "We need to hit them hard before they reach the core worlds. Send the order. Launch all ships. Engage the progenitor fleet. And Commander, I need you to coordinate with us on the front lines. It's all or nothing now." Harrington's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Lena saw a flicker of something akin to urgency in his expression. "Understood, Captain. We'll be in the fight within the hour. Prepare yourselves." The screen went dark, and Lena turned to her crew. There was no more time for strategizing or second-guessing. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders, and they had no choice but to fight. "Prepare for launch," Lena ordered, her voice resolute. "All ships, engage the progenitor fleet on my mark. Let's show them what humanity can do." The Federation fleet surged forward into the black void of space, ready to face the progenitors in what would undoubtedly be one of the most brutal battles in galactic history. The ships of the Guardians followed in their wake, their immense forms now joining the fray. As the first blasts of energy collided in the darkness of space, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The progenitors had come for more than just victory. They were here to reclaim their place as rulers of the galaxy. And humanity, with all its hidden power and ancient technology, was the only force that stood between them and complete domination. In the heart of the storm, Lena's voice echoed across the comms, rallying her fleet for the galaxy, for Earth, for humanity. We fight now. The battle had begun, and there would be no retreat. The Guardians and the Federation were about to face a foe unlike any other. The stars were ablaze with the fury of battle. Federation ships, led by the Vigilance, engaged the progenitor fleet in the vast emptiness of space, the energy from their weapons lighting up the void. It was a fight for survival. Every blast that rang out, every ship that disintegrated in a fiery explosion, was a desperate attempt to hold back the tide of annihilation. Captain Lena stood at the heart of the chaos, her eyes fixed on the tactical display as she commanded the fleet. The progenitor's ships were like nothing they had ever seen, sleek, smooth, and impossibly large. Their weapons cracked the Federation's shields like they were made of paper. The progenitors weren't just powerful. They were surgical. Their ships moved with an intelligence and precision that made them seem like an extension of the galaxy itself. Their every maneuver was calculated, their attacks brutal. "Captain, we've lost the Ardent," came a voice from the communications console. Lena's eyes narrowed. The ship had been part of their first wave, and it had already been overwhelmed by the progenitors' advanced weaponry. It wasn't the first casualty, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. "Send the Vigilance's reserves to the Lancer," Lena barked. "We need to cover their retreat." Her voice was steady, but inside, she felt the weight of each loss. The Federation was fighting with everything it had, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. From the corner of her eye, she noticed the massive shapes of the Guardian ships moving in formation, their sleek ancient designs cutting through the blackness like specters. Despite their formidable weapons, they seemed almost hesitant, as though they were waiting for something. The Guardians had come to Earth's aid, but they had yet to show their full power. "Commander Harrington," Lena called through the comms. "We need those ships to push forward. Now. The progenitors are tearing us apart." There was a brief pause before Harrington's voice came through, his tone calm but laced with urgency. "The Guardians are activating their defense networks. We're positioning ourselves to engage the progenitors head-on. But, Captain, there's something you need to know. We've detected anomalies in the progenitor ships. Their systems are evolving. They're adapting faster than we anticipated." Lena's heart sank. The progenitors weren't just formidable. They were learning, adjusting to the Federation's tactics in real time. It was like fighting an enemy that could anticipate every move, every strategy. "We need to hit them harder," then Lena said, her voice hard with resolve. "Activate the Vigilance's primary weapon systems. We're going in." As the Vigilance began to reposition itself for a direct strike, an explosion rocked the ship, sending a violent shudder through the hull. The lights flickered, and alarms blared. Lena gripped the edge of the command console, trying to maintain her balance. "Damage report," she demanded. The officer at the station quickly scanned the data. "Portside shields are failing, Captain. Heavy damage to the rear stabilizers. If we don't reroute power, we'll lose maneuverability." Lena's mind raced. They couldn't afford to lose another ship in the line of fire. If they couldn't fight the progenitors' fleet head-on, they would have to outsmart them. But how? "We're not backing down," Lena said, her voice cold with determination. "Divert all power to forward shields and weapons. Sarthak, get ready to launch our full missile payload. We're going in hard and fast." Sarthak, the Thraxian officer, nodded, his mandibles clicking in a rare show of anticipation. "Aye, Captain. We'll breach their defenses." At that moment, something unexpected happened. The Guardian ships, now fully engaged in the fight, suddenly surged forward with an almost terrifying speed. The energy from their hulls flared as they unleashed torrents of destructive force upon the progenitors. Massive beams of concentrated energy cut through the progenitor fleet like a hot knife through butter. The Federation fleet, momentarily stunned by the sheer power of the Guardian assault, quickly followed suit, pushing forward with renewed vigor. "We've broken their front lines," one of the officers exclaimed. But before they could celebrate, a new wave of progenitor ships appeared, larger, more menacing. They were unlike the others, massive in scale, with dark tendrils of energy crackling around them. These ships were different. They seemed to possess an organic, almost alive quality. The progenitors were adapting, growing more powerful as the battle raged on. "They've summoned reinforcements," Lena muttered, her eyes narrowing as she watched the new threat emerge. Harrington's voice came over the comms, urgent and firm. "Captain, the progenitors are entering a new phase of combat. They've activated something, some kind of energy weapon. If we don't stop it, they'll decimate our entire fleet." Lena knew what that meant. The progenitors weren't just fighting. They were preparing to finish the war, to wipe out any resistance once and for all. And if they succeeded, it would be the end of everything. "We're not done yet," Lena declared, her voice ringing with defiance. "All ships, focus fire on the lead progenitor ship. We hit them now, or it's over." As the battle intensified, Lena felt the weight of their mission press down on her. The progenitors had returned, and they were not going to stop until they had eradicated everything the galaxy had built. But Earth's defenders, led by the Guardians and the Federation's unyielding resolve, were not going to give up without a fight. The forge of war had been ignited, and only one side would emerge victorious. The battle had reached a fever pitch. Space was alive with fire, energy, and chaos as the Federation fleet and the Guardian ships fought with everything they had against the progenitors' seemingly endless reinforcements. The progenitors' massive warships surged forward, their dark, organic tendrils extending like malignant fingers into the void, unleashing waves of destructive energy. Each strike was a reminder of their power, a power that threatened to swallow the galaxy whole. Captain Lena stood at the heart of the chaos aboard the Vigilance, her gaze fixed on the tactical map as explosions flashed across the screen. The Federation fleet was buckling under the weight of the progenitor's onslaught, but the Guardians were holding their ground, their ancient ships now fully unleashed, radiating a terrifying energy. Yet, it wasn't enough. The progenitors were adapting faster than they could anticipate, countering every tactic with terrifying precision. "Captain, the Centurion is going down." Sarthak's voice crackled through the comms, cold and clipped. "We can't sustain another hit like that. They've breached our shields." Lena's heart skipped a beat. The Centurion had been one of their best dreadnoughts, a flagship capable of taking on entire fleets. If it was falling, the battle was worse than they feared. But there was no time to dwell on that. "Get us in position," she commanded, voice steady despite the rising fear. "We need to hit them with everything we've got. Target the lead progenitor warship, the one charging its main weapon." Her eyes flicked over to the Guardian ships, their forms now moving with the precision of a masterful strike force. Energy beams crackled from their weapons, cutting through progenitor warships with explosive force, but the progenitors retaliated just as quickly. This was the turning point. If they couldn't break through the progenitors' lines now, the battle would be lost. Their weapons charging faster, the weapons officer shouted. "Captain, if we don't stop them, they'll fire in the next 30 seconds. Lena's mind raced. The progenitors had activated a weapon capable of vaporizing entire fleets, a last resort weapon that would wipe out the Federation and the Guardians in one devastating blow. The galaxy's future was hanging by a thread, and she knew the next move would decide everything. "All ships, full assault on the progenitor flagship. We need to take out that weapon," Lena ordered, her voice unwavering. The Federation fleet surged forward, its remaining ships pushing past the carnage to focus on the progenitor flagship. The Vigilance led the charge, its weapons roaring to life, firing concentrated energy bursts that slammed into the progenitor shields. But the enemy's defenses were stronger than anything the Federation had ever encountered. The shields absorbed the blows without even a tremor, and the progenitors retaliated with beams of blinding energy that cut through the Vigilance's armor like a hot knife through butter. Lena gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles white. "Divert all power to forward shields," she shouted. "We're not stopping until that weapon is disabled." The Vigilance shuddered as the enemy fire struck, the ship groaning under the strain. But Lena refused to back down. The Federation had come too far, and Earth's last defenders, the Guardians, were counting on them. They had to hold on. They had to break through. Just as the progenitor flagship's weapon began to glow with an eerie, dangerous light, Commander Harrington's voice broke through the chaos. "Captain, we've found a weakness. There's a structural weak point near their central core. Focus fire on that." Lena's pulse quickened. This was the opening they needed. "Everyone, target the core," she barked. "All fire on that weak point. We break them now." The Vigilance and the remaining ships of the Federation, including the Guardian vessels, focused every last ounce of their firepower on the progenitor flagship. The air around them seemed to hum with the intensity of their combined assault. The blast from the Vigilance was the first to hit, a massive surge of energy that collided with the progenitor's central core. For a moment, nothing happened. The progenitor ship's shields held firm, and for a brief, terrifying second, it seemed as though their combined might had been for nothing. Then it happened. The ship trembled violently as the shield flickered, then collapsed under the force of the combined firepower. The core of the progenitor flagship erupted in a burst of blue and white light, an explosion so intense it illuminated the entire battlefield. "Direct hit," a crew member yelled. "The progenitor flagship's going down." The progenitor warship cracked open like an egg, its immense form buckling under the strain of the explosion. A wave of destructive energy surged outward, ripping through the progenitor fleet, and in a single, blinding instant, several other progenitor ships were torn apart in the shockwave. Lena's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't over yet. The progenitors were still regrouping, their fleets still strong. But this was the first major victory in an otherwise grim battle. "We did it," Sarthak muttered. "We've only just begun," Lena replied, her voice tight. "This is just the start. But we've given the galaxy a chance." The battle raged on, but for the first time, there was hope. The progenitors had been stopped, at least for now, and in that fleeting moment of triumph, humanity's hidden power had proven that even in the darkest of times, the will to protect the galaxy could spark a fire strong enough to challenge the greatest of threats. The Guardians and the Federation, united in this last stand, had changed the course of history.